I've seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby Blog. I am Cammy Black. Joining me this evening, I want to say to my right, but I don't know. It might be to my left. As you're looking at this, how does it work, John?
I think we're kind of in some that way.
There we go.
Yeah. I think we're in some kind of weird multi-universe sort of thing where direction
so if I point
doesn't matter
that way,
anymore.
It doesn't look to me like I'm pointing towards you, but it makes it look like I'm pointing towards you on the screen. It's weird,
exactly,
isn't it? That my finger disappears. Anyway, that's no good if you're listening to this, because that would be completely nonsensical. But we are live, and you can watch us live on YouTube, live on Twitter and Twitch. If you're joining us, say hello in the comments. If you've got any comments on anything we're talking, then please chip in and we'll happily pick up on those. Bear in mind, we're about 20 seconds ahead of you. So if you try and provide some context to your comments, and that helps us a little bit, and we'll try and pick them up as we go ahead. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Acast, and anywhere else you can get your podcasts. You can find us as well, scottishrugbyblog.co.uk, for all the latest match reports, player ratings, and the like. We haven't got any player ratings for the France game, so what John and I are going to do tonight, by way of reviewing the matches, we'll talk about the match a little bit, but we're going to do some live player ratings tonight, so it's a bit exciting. You can also, if you want, sign up for our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. There'll be details going along the bottom of the screen now if you're watching this, or you go to the blog, scottishrugbyblog.co.uk, and you can find out more about that. So for £3 a month, you can enter the Richie Vernon Thunderdome. So that's about the price of a pint these days, less than the price of a pint even, and you get access. You get access to ad-free versions of the podcast. You also get a mini version of the podcast if you can't be bothered listening to the full hour-plus rambling that we do. We are now doing kind of an edited version for those people without the time to listen to the full version. You also get exclusive episodes. So we've got one coming up that we promise will be out next week on Scotland's hardest player of all time. And there'll be a poll going out on the Patreon page in the next week or so. And you can also find some ones we've already done there. Ian and I had a chat about Regulation 8 and eligibility. We've done Rugby Sevens. John, you and I did a kind of preamble to our criteria for what the world's or Scotland's hardest player was.
We also had a tinfoil hat episode, which was quite amusing.
Yeah, we also kind of established whether or not quiche was better than pizza, I think, at one point as well in an early one. So
that was the first one. We've identified whether quiche is better than pizza. We've created Johnny Gray as a scale of measuring contraception. So
that's right. Comparing Johnny Gray's tackle success rate to how successful different versions of contraception are. He is better than a condom.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's, but for £5 a month, if you sign up for £5 a month, you get your name read out on the podcast as a little thank you for paying that little bit extra. It supports us, helps us put out these live podcasts, and also kind of helps the podcast keep going as well. we've got a little bit of exciting news for next week. Now, next week was supposed to be the Fiji match. Obviously, that's been cancelled because the coronavirus has run rampant through the Fiji camp, which is it's disappointing, John, because I was looking forward to seeing Fiji in the tournament. I was looking forward to Scotland Fiji games are always exciting. Even we generally win. I think we've beaten by Fiji away.
Yep.
But we've got a good record at home. They're normally entertaining matches.
Yeah, they usually are, and it would have been quite interesting to see how Scotland were going to approach that match, given that maybe in the Italy and France games. Obviously, we'll talk about the France game as we get going, but the approach to the games has maybe been a little bit more pragmatic, shall we say. So it would have been interesting to see what had happened had Fiji kind of dragged Scotland into a bit of a ballers style game.
Yes, I mean, we'll come on to that and selections for the France game in a moment. But so what we're going to do in place of that, some people may have seen that Amazon have put out a film called Oceans Apart, which has been produced by Daniel Leo, who's the former Samoa captain. And it's kind of looking at the way that Pacific Rugby and Pacific Rugby players are treated by World Rugby. So he's produced it himself on a budget of £10,000, which is very impressive. He goes around, he's speaking to Brett Gosper, speaking to Ben Ryan, who coached the Fiji Sevens team. And it's just really looking at the disparity in the way that Pacific Island nations are treated compared to, the Tier 1 nations, really. So we're going to review that film. We've also lined up an interview with Dan Leo as well. So Ian's got to be doing that on Monday. If you've got any questions and you're one of our Patreons, then drop us a line on the Hugh Dan fans secret page that we have on social media. Given away a clue to the name, but you need to be a Patreon before I'll admit you into that room. So if you're on
a list, and we will check it.
We will check it like Santa Claus. I've got a list and I check it twice. Yep. And even if you're on the list, please answer the specific questions. Don't just not answer them because I'll just boot you before you even get a chance.
Can I just put that forward as a constant standing hands on the ruck, a very early one. If there's questions in a Facebook group, answer them. They're not there for a laugh. They're there for a reason. It's to make sure you're not a Russian sex bot. Answer them.
If Russian sex bots are interested in signing up for the Patreon, and you can have access to the super secret social media group in return for £3 a month. I'll allow it.
Exactly. Yeah.
There might be some Patreons that would welcome that as well. Liven up the
well,
group.
If there is any of them who want to maybe encourage Russian sex bots to join, again, we are clearly not. Our morals do not stretch far enough to not allow that. If there is £3 a month arriving, we will be happy. We will not care.
Yes. So if you've got questions for Dan Leo, then let us know. We're hoping to get somebody else on as well, and we're working hard on that to have somebody else. And we're going to watch. I think Ian's already watched the film. Is suitably furious. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it over the weekend, and we'll talk about the film and kind of some of the wider issues as well. So there'll be a long, lengthy podcast for Patreons where we'll go into depth in it. It'll be longer interviews. There will be a shortened version for non-patrons where you'll get clips of the interviews and a bit of our discussion around it and hands in the ruck and the normal things as well. So we've got that. We've also excitingly got another special guest lined up for early December. So watch this space as well. Maybe 3 special guests if it all works out well. So watch this space. Lots of things coming up on the podcast. Now, John, I was having a chat on a group chat I'm in today. We were talking about the most middle class things in the world. And, rugby's one of those. It's probably a fairly middle class thing. That's why it does its best to suppress Pacific Nations rugby.
Absolutely.
What's the most to your mind? What is the most middle class thing?
So, I was considering this, and I remember having to say that 2 seconds. I'm to say to my tennis coach. 2 seconds.
There you go, straight away.
Just going on a conference call because I decided to go and work from home, but I decided to go to the tennis courts to work for an hour, and I had to pause my conference call to go and stop playing tennis. So that's pretty. There's also a really good Twitter thread that is called "Overheard in Waitrose," and I've stumbled upon one just now. Overheard in Waitrose. I kid you not, on phone. It's absolute carnage in here. No Goya berries, no quail eggs, no samphire. Don't even know what samphire is. All out of stock. God knows what I'm going to do tonight. I hope that isn't your invite. It's.
I think you had me at tennis. I was speaking to my tennis coach, to be honest.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, the most middle class thing I think we came up in the group chat was that in your house you have no carpet downstairs.
Yeah. No,
that's middle class.
That's
and speaking of having no carpet downstairs.
Very good.
Thank you. You see what I've been working on that all day. Speaking of that, we the podcast is brought to you in partnership with Manscaped, who are new to the UK, and they produce men's grooming products. So you get you can get some clippers for doing your downstairs. If that is something that you want to do, you're under no pressure to do it from us. I've said before, not something I'm into. John and Ian, you've given it a go.
We have, yes.
The products have worked without any. There's been no nipping, no.
Yes, very decent products. The clipper is very effective. Can also work on your eyebrows if you so desire. So.
Well, there you go. I have to say I did use them. I have used them to trim the stubble, and it works.
The wee guards that comes with are quite good, quite handy.
And if you like me, you just can't bother shaving, but you like to keep it fairly short. It's because it's designed to be gentle. It's quite gentle on the skin, so it's nice.
I mean, I'm quite the opposite. You Cam, I like to keep a nice clean shaven face, and it's getting quite big now. Actually,
it is. I know it's impressive. It's getting longer. You're growing out for Christmas, of course.
Well, of course, yeah, because everyone's got to have a side hustle, and if it's the most wonderful time of year. I'm quite concerned. All I've talked about in this podcast so far is making money. This is
that's not what you do through the podcast. Let's tell you,
capitalist dogs.
Yeah, all we get in return for this is free products from Manscaped.
Every penny counts.
It does, yeah. So if you are interested in that, and I will say it's probably going to be a limited time thing only. So if you've been thinking about investing in something on Manscaped, go to manscaped.com. If you use the code SRP, you get 20% off and free shipping. So there's lots of things on there. They've got deodorant for you downstairs. They've got toner. They've got nose hair clippers, all sorts of different things, not just clippers for your nethers.
Every week, I always go on about the toner. It is fabulous stuff. I'm a massive fan. It is essential oils for any bit of you that you've decided to remove hair from, or if you've had a very difficult band practice, and like me, you've got little middle class tender fingers that just tap on keyboards for a living, and then you subject them to drumming like you're trying to remember what it was like to be 18 again and be cool. The essential oils are very good for your fingertips.
Yeah, so there you go. So that's manscaped.com. Like I said, we don't know how much longer we're going to be able to offer that promotion. So if you have been dithering or you've got it in mind you want to get one for Christmas, then get on with it is what I would suggest, because it's not going to hang around forever. So go to manscaped.com, put in the code SRP, and you get 20% off and free postage as well. Now, moving on, we are going to talk about the France game in a moment. First of all, there's two bits of news. The first bit of news is there's the big AGM coming up for the SRU. Now, that it was postponed slightly because obviously there was a delay in releasing the accounts. One of the motions, there's two motions proposed. One is proposed by Curry that seeks to reassert the authority of elective council to oversee the management of the union, and the second, proposed by Glasgow Hawks, seeks to increase transparency in Scottish Rugby's decision-making process. However, there's an emergency motion by I'll get the names of the clubs right. It's Bigger is one of the clubs, and the name of the other club has I had it in my notes in front of me and it's disappeared. Basically, it's the two clubs that were promoted from their leagues beyond all doubt.
Yes.
Couldn't be caught, they'd be promoted, and because the season was ended, they'd been denied promotion. So their motion says we should be promoted, and nobody should be forced to be relegated unless they want to. Now, we've talked about this before about the way the season ended. It was, for those that don't know or don't remember, the SRU consulted on how the season should be ended by writing to all clubs. Clubs responded. The SRU said, we've gone with what the majority have said and we've just ended the season now and there's no promotion or relegation. None of the clubs have been informed that their views were binding. I think they were able to vote on a number of different options. So it wasn't put forward as a vote, which I think obviously bigger are upset about, understandably. There are clubs probably who would quite happily welcome relegation. There are clubs who would welcome promotion, no doubt, and had a chance to do that. So the league wasn't ended in a satisfactory way, and those clubs are looking to try and earn their rightful place when the league resumes. And that would seem fair, I think, Joe. I mean, it seems very fair.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely fair. I think when you just take it in isolation, right? So even in a perfect situation where the clubs had been given full consultation and were aware of binding nature of votes or whatever, the fact is that it's not in the interest of the vast majority of most leagues. So the middle part of the league don't actually care if you end the league. The bottom part definitely want you to end the league and have no promotion or relegation. And the guys at the top, the guys who are definitely getting promoted, who there was a minority of, want the league to be resolved properly. So by simply putting it out to the clubs, you're like, well, there's only going to be one outcome and it's not going to be the one that, I to say it's what the majority of the clubs wanted is such a cop-out because the majority of the clubs have no interest in what the outcome was.
Turkey's voting for Christmas, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So it's bigger and Dalkeith are the two clubs that put forward a special motion. I think that's going to happen after the AGM. So watch this space to see how that pans out. Especially, I think now that the season as is, I think, has been completely cancelled. And we've got a vaccine of multiple vaccines on the horizon. So it's getting a season up and running next September is looking promising. What happens in the meantime is anyone's guess, but certainly we've moved on a lot from having small little regional kickabouts in many tournaments, which we were looking at a few weeks ago. It's all gone. So we will see. We'll pick up, no doubt, in the next couple of weeks, kind of things coming out of the AGM and the accounts. As always, keep an eye on the offside line, who do a very good job of reporting on it and commenting on it too. So if you want to kind of see where things are going, that's what to do. In Scotland news, Jaco Vanderwaal has been added to the Scotland squad. He was, I mean, it's no big secret, John. He's been training with them since day one.
Yeah. I know it's like rugby's biggest, best kept secret. It certainly was not. I mean, he was always going to be added as soon as he was available, and I think had he, obviously his wedding had been planned, and obviously circumstances dictated that he had to then isolate on return and stuff like that. So had he not had to do that, I think he would have been in before now. So. But it's great actually that we've got the kind of the unfortunate situation of a fallow week now where Jaco can come in and they can properly run through the shapes. I think they'll have a decent idea who they're going to be up against, assuming that Italy don't go full Italy and cause carnage.
Yeah, I mean, it's not full France squad that's facing Italy, so you never know what might happen.
I know, and then we'll take a stab at England, and then we'll win, and it would just be glorious.
Yeah. So obviously he would have been facing Fiji this weekend. You would have thought he probably would have started to get him up to speed with international rugby. You would have thought.
Possibly. I think there's an argument for that. I think they would probably have went with Weir again and maybe bring him on quite early just to.
My only thought on that, and this is where I don't know that we'll definitely see him for the last game, because I don't know what that he offers enough from the bench.
Yeah.
So you're really looking at either starting him or not, because your bench is you really you want the James Lang style on the bench.
Yeah, the multi-position cover. Yeah, I think there was definitely more of an argument for Jaco on the bench when you had Russell, or if you had either Russell or Hastings available.
Mm-hmm.
There was more scope for Jaco. Him and Weir are very similar players. They're both not. They're 10s through and through. There's no.
Yeah.
Maybe I guess you could throw Weir to fullback and watch as the revolving door would be firmly open in that one.
It's not. I mean, potentially it's Ireland, isn't it? So that's not. Yeah. It's not a game, although it's a test. And that, let's face it, these are tests. They're not. It's not the Six Nations, so he's going to need the game time.
Yeah,
they want to get him tied. I mean, not like South Africa knocking down the door for him or anything. It's not, but they want to get him tied up and get him some game time before the Six Nations. So it'll be the selection for the Ireland match is going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I tend to disagree with you in this one. I think I understand what you're saying about the bench balance, but I think they will use it as just an opportunity really to get them kind of tied down.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, at best, you would say realistically his third choice. I know, like, there's been there was all the chat about Duncan Weir beforehand. Where's Duncan Weir? Why is Duncan Weir not in the squad? Why is he's ripping up trees at Worcester? I think we can all agree now, having watched him the last couple of weeks, that he is a decent rugby player who is not at the level necessarily that he's great cover to have. We can call him up anytime, but he's not going to be battering down the door for being the second choice or even first choice fly half. So yeah. I
mean, Duncan Weir is 29.
Aye.
And Jaco Vanderwaal is how old is he? 26. I mean, there's only he's got a few more years on him, I think, in terms of.
I mean, potentially he's got another World Cup in him. That's the way we need to be really thinking about this. I know Kevin Miller on his blog does quite a lot of work on the kind of World Cup cycles and looks at kind of player age bands and stuff like that. And it's if you haven't checked it out before, it's really worth having a look at. The affectionately titled On Top of the Moon.
Yeah,
go and check it out. And he does a lot about that kind of age balance. And someone who's 26 would potentially have a World Cup in them. Someone at 29, you're not really likely to see them.
Yeah. What was the name of the player that?
We always forget the name of the player.
I know there's always one player I forget the name of every episode. The player who New Zealand called up who was fishing during the 2011 World Cup.
Oh yeah,
Stephen.
Oh no, Stephen Donald.
Stephen Donald.
Yeah,
that's what you're looking at. You're looking at Duncan Weir fishing somewhere, doing whatever Duncan Weir does in his spare time, getting called
Duncan
up.
Weir fishing. I think he would be. It just strikes me that he would be a good fisherman.
I think it's the hair.
Maybe. Or maybe just the lack of neck. I don't know. Is there maybe like I've not really got an archetypal fisherman look other than like Duncan Weir with his wee beautiful chin and no neck.
But I think it's the kind of the vision of a pair of waders up to his chin.
Aye, yeah.
That's what you're thinking of.
With his ears kind of tickling the bottom.
So that's the addition to the squad. I think it's Ryan Wilson been included in the squad as well.
Has he?
I don't know. I think Jaco Vanderwaal's the only call up to the squad officially. I don't know if he's. I would hope not.
I mean, based on his right. So let's do this just now. So based on the Glasgow game on Monday, if Ryan Wilson's in the Scotland squad, someone has made and someone's dialed the wrong number, or sent, they've obviously just copied someone in and they're too ashamed to retract it. And, they've tried to recall the email, but it hasn't went through in time. And they're raging, but they're like, well, we're just going to have to go with it now. The customer's always right. In this case, Ryan Wilson's now part of the Scotland setup again. No, come on.
They've called the wrong. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, he was absolutely. I mean, I'm not singling him out because plenty about Glasgow was pretty honking on Monday night, but he was particularly bad.
I mean, while we're talking about it, I mean, the interesting thing is, and it's a dilemma for Danny Wilson because I think we've said for both Edinburgh and Glasgow, this is now a development season, and that's the way they've got to look at it. It's not a normal season. Let's just forget about challenging for the league. It's getting young players through the season, and that seems to be watching the games. Those are the players that are standing up.
Yeah, yep.
Those are the players. Those are the players that are putting in the performances and are sticking into the end, and it's the established heads that have gone. And there's no explanation for that. I mean, in a way, you need the older heads to help guide the youngsters through, but it's almost the youngsters are dragging the older heads along with them. I mean, there's probably a case for saying, just drop the older ones together, get a team of youngsters, and just throw them out every week and get them game experience.
Yeah, no, there is that
experience
argument.
Of losing, but I don't know what the good that does, but it's still experience of pro rugby.
Yeah, I think there will. Yeah, there's always that argument, and I think you've got to assume that having the older heads there is giving the youngsters maybe the confidence. I don't know why. They're obviously not aware of what their older compatriots are doing, because if they had half a clue, they would be panicking. But it's maybe giving them the confidence to go and express themselves, or maybe it's just that maybe they've bought in more to, guys like Ryan Wilson are used to winning. They're used to winning games. They're used to winning titles. They're used to being at the kind of end of seasons, playing in semi-finals. These guys are coming through and they've not got that expectation, and they've maybe bought in more to if Danny Wilson's behind the scenes, because he's obviously not going to say in public, yeah, by the way, guys, this is a complete write-off. So don't worry if you're going over and getting Leinster absolutely spanking you. Don't worry if we're getting beaten at home. Don't worry if we've got the same amount of points as Zebri. Let's not worry about that. And maybe the younger guys are buying into that more and saying, do you know what, right, well, no, this is, I can't be expected to be dragging this team to playoffs. If I show up, if I show well, then I'll get a contract, and there might be more scope in the future. But it doesn't help that some of the maybe more experienced heads that Glasgow have recruited or have available seem to have their legs have gone. Guys like pains me to say it, but even like watching Nico, he looked off the pace. Tommy Seymour had a decent start to the game, but again hasn't really been decent this season. So it's really tough.
Yeah, it is hard. And speaking of games that are tough, because we will get around to talking about this now, Scotland, France. Scotland lost 15-22 to France. Now, as always with these things, John, the response to this, I think, has been blown out of proportion. Because to me, that wasn't it wasn't the same as when we used to lose to France in the past. It was a different kind of loss. It's the kind of loss that England or Ireland would have against France every second year. And you'd go, do you know what? Both teams were in that for 80 minutes. And with the better team won on the day. That to me would be how I would sum up that match. I don't think it was that Scotland were the worst team on the day. They weren't the better team, but that's not to say they were the worst team. I think if Scotland were as bad as some people have suggested, they would have got absolutely honked.
Yeah. Scotland fans do like to, I don't know, it's maybe a trauma response from years gone by. We do have this, and I say I use that term very deliberately because we've all done it, and anyone who hasn't is lying as much as #RugbyValues. We do tend to overreact to these things, and could probably wind it back to the Tuesday clock and all that. We were and we're on here, obviously milking things for entertainment purposes. We are the WWE of supporters just now, guys. But we do tend to overreact to things, and the reaction to the game at the weekend was nothing short of just. I turned my phone off. I was just, this is just ridiculous.
There's been a lot said. Now I'll go through some stats in a minute. There's been a lot said about Scotland's attacking performance. I think that has to be seen in the context of France's defensive performance.
France were very good in defence, yep.
And even Scotland were very good in defence. I mean, there's one try in it. Yep. Okay. And yes, potentially you could argue, I mean, the Fraser Brown held France up over the line as well. So potentially 2 tries. But I don't think, France rarely didn't threaten Scotland's try line necessarily any more than Scotland threatened France's try line.
Yep.
So that's the difference. The difference in the game is France got one opportunistic try. They took their chance very well and they scored a try. And Stuart Hogg nearly held up Vakatawa as well over the line. So again, that Stuart Hogg, I think 2-3 seasons ago, isn't making that tackle either because he's not trusting the man outside him or he's going to slip off it. But it was a very strong tackle, got good technique to get underneath him. But Vakatawa's a big lad. He's not.
Yeah, you're not going to stop him from there, really.
So that really, looking at it dispassionately, that's the difference. One opportunistic try, very well taken. And other than that, the teams were entirely evenly matched in defence and attack.
It was one of the most even games of rugby I've seen. And France, as you say, they took their opportunities better. And they probably, when they were dominant, it's interesting because when they were dominant within the game, because obviously games they flow, and both teams had periods where they were on top. And probably France made more of when they were on top. Try aside, even when they were more dominant, Scotland were making more tackles. They were working harder, and that all accumulates towards the end. But I think it was just a really good game of rugby. It was just solid. In terms of, I should caveat that it was a very even game of rugby. Wasn't necessarily a very good game of rugby.
No, it wasn't. It was one for the purist, as they would say.
Yes.
The interesting thing is, though, people talk about Scotland's attack, and as I said, I don't think it was any worse than France's attack, really, given that we're on, and this isn't, I got called out for this when I said, we're on our third choice fly half at the weekend, and people thought I was insulting Duncan Weir, and I wasn't. It's just the truth of the matter is Duncan Weir is not our first choice or our second choice fly half,
and potentially even our third now, really.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, and you look at it. Now Scotland tackled. Scotland made 98 tackles, missed 16. France made 119 and missed 19. So they're both on 86% tackle rate. So you can't say that Scotland missed more tackles than France. Both the same. In fact, France made more tackles.
Yep. Which
would suggest that we had the ball more. In terms of possession, both halves we had more. We were creeping up to 60%, 55% possession first half, 59% second half. Territory, which again, because possession isn't everything, but territory-wise, again, Scotland were winning the territory. 57% first half, 59% second half. Beat more defenders than France. So it's not made more meters, passed more, ran more, kicked from hand a bit more. It's not, all of these things together, they're not, I don't think it suggests we haven't become a bad attacking team or a bad team overnight just because of this game. In fact, statistically, you could argue that, Scotland were doing more than France. How effective that was, I don't think, we don't know, but they give away more penalties. They double the penalty count on France. But it wasn't like the penalties we were giving away needlessly against Italy. The penalties we were giving away were in the right areas of the park.
Yeah, it was generally, yeah, and it was more of a day for, if you're giving away penalties, you're not going to the weather wasn't brilliant. It's more of a day for
Stick it
people
up the
aren't gonna
jumper.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that naturally comes more, France are doing that. We're trying to get the ball back. There's going to be more penalties, and that's fine. But again, it goes back to the point we've made a number of times on this podcast that if rugby was played on paper, Scotland would have won that game. All the stats suggest Scotland should have won that game, but we are also up against, and people are, we can talk about the Duncan Weir thing all we want. We're up against a world-class team in France who've probably been, maybe England aside, maybe, certainly the form team of the Northern Hemisphere, and they are improving game on game as well. And we were in that game with them. We competed well with them, and there's no there's no shame in that whatsoever.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing. Dougie Lowe on our super secret social media post, he's done this as his hands in the ruck. It's worth talking about now because it came up at the weekend. His question is why do teams kick so much these days? And Sam Warburton did a really interesting bit on the Amazon coverage on this, and the reason why is it's about territory. Is that the best teams kick for territory, because if you kick to the team and you've got a good kick chase and you put pressure on their kickers, then you're playing in the right area of the park, and you're saying to the opposition, you have the ball, we're going to come and try and win it back from you. We're going to force an error, because if you force an error in a kickable position, you've got a penalty. That gives you the option. You kick it goal, you kick to the corner. Forcing somebody to kind of kicking deep and not doing a kick chase, forcing someone to kick deep back to you if you've got good chasers, and they might kick it out on the full. Then you've got a line out and you start your attack again. So rugby isn't a possession game anymore. I think it was maybe 20, 30 years ago. Rugby's a territory game effectively now.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. And I think there's an element of you shouldn't make many mistakes when you don't have the ball. And what I mean by that, obviously, you can concede penalties, you can concede knock-ons, etc. when you don't have the ball, obviously. But the likelihood of you doing these things is lessened because you have essentially full control over your defensive structure. You have the opposition are playing in front of you; they're making the play. You're not actually having to make decisions based on shapes or anything. You're literally running defensive structures. It's an easier way to play.
Yeah, and if you're doing that in the right area of the field and you give away a penalty, then if it's in the opposition half, that doesn't matter. Yeah, they get an opportunity to kick for a line out, but they're not getting an opportunity to kick for the posts.
No, exactly. And then it was Dave Rennie spoke a lot about turnover ball when he was coach at Glasgow. And if you are able to generate turnover ball in the opposition half, you score a lot of tries off turnover ball. That's what all the best teams look to do, because when you turn over like that, then the opposition defence isn't set, and that's where you can create space, create havoc, take your opportunities. If you're trying to do that from under your own posts, yes, it can be done. See Johnny Mays try at the weekend, but it's more unlikely to happen. So you're more likely, if you turn over under your own post, you're going to throw it back to the tiny end goal areas and watch your fly half shank it 10 metres up the park and have a line out and then get mauled into the corner. Yes, I'm still annoyed about it.
Yeah. In terms of the players, now, so we do live player ratings. We're not normally when we do these for the blog, and Rory's promised he's going to do some later in the week where we do the proper scientific breakdown.
Yes,
attack, defense,
I'm
influence.
glad we're not doing that on live, because there's less scope for me to make ridiculous gut feeling assessments.
That's what we're doing.
Really
yeah,
important.
Let's go with our gut tonight, John, because if our guts have taught us anything over the years, it's that we know nothing. Our guts know nothing, but it's entertaining nonetheless. Rory's got the special magic algorithm calculator that works it all up to get out together anyway, so we'll leave him to do that. We're going to give our honest gut assessments.
We're technically giving the unofficial Scottish Rugby Blog podcast player ratings.
Yes. So what should we do? Should we start 1 to 15, or do you do 15 backwards?
I think we'll go 1 to 15 because I know that'll annoy the purists.
Okay, so let's do the front row then. We've got Ollie Kebble, Fraser Brown, and Simon Bergen. Now, Ollie Kebble has come in for a bit of stick, I think, because he starting the match, he didn't have the same impact as coming on as a sub. Yep. I think anybody that comes on as a sub, the size and shape of Ollie Kebble will make an impact because you're running up against tired legs.
Yes,
but he did okay.
I thought I was surprised people were being so critical of him. He was up against a very, very big French front row. I think he done okay. I think he offered in the loose. He scrummaged okay.
Yeah,
I had no issue with him.
No, he gave away 2 penalties. I think one of those was at the scrum. 6 tackles, missed 1. 5 runs with the ball. I thought he supported well. It's a solid 6. It's a classic 6 out of 10 performance for me.
It's Ross Ford all over.
It is. It's the Ross Ford 6 out of 10. Yep. The Ross Ford 6. It was fine, and I think the problem it wasn't. The scrum went backwards, but that wasn't a permanent issue. It got resolved on field, which isn't something we've seen from Scotland scrums before, because normally we get mullered in the first scrum and then that's the tail of the match.
Yeah, we're going to be penalised all the rest of the day after that one, particularly with the referee that we had in.
Come on to Mr. Barnes and hands in the ruck, or what I'm calling, is it a tackle or a maul this week?
What's the French for hands in the ruck? Do we have that yet?
What is hands in French? Dans le ruck would be the. I can't remember what the French for hands is. No,
I was surprised.
I used to know. Oh, no. Tête. I'm going to sing this in French now. Tête à pas genou pied. No, that's head, shoulders, and eyes and nose and mouth and nose. No, there's no hands in head, shoulders, knees and toes.
You shouldn't have any of those in the ruck, to be honest.
No.
Shoulders, maybe.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes has eyes and ears and mouth and nose. It doesn't have hands and...
Dougie Lowe's given us le main.
Le main dans le ruck.
And do you know what? I appreciate the effort because it is done in a Wayne Barnes-esque fashion where you are only using half of the French, and there might be a word for ruck in French, but we don't know it, so we're going to say ruck.
Yeah, we're just going to do essentially. I mean, Wayne Barnes is essentially Del Boy. And only fools and horses. That's his level of French.
Where were we? Ollie Kebble.
Yes. Ollie Kebble. Well, so Ollie Kebble, 6 out of 10. Fraser Brown, again, another 6 out of 10. He made his tackles. He didn't do anything mad this time. The line-out throw was okay. Again, it's a
pretty ineffective game from Fraser Brown, but quiet. But then, in some ways, that's a good thing because Fraser does tend to go for he's a go big or go home sort of player, and quite often that involves going home with an injury. So I'm pleased that he's not doing that today. Yes.
Now I'm going to stress, I'm getting these stats. There is no stats package for the match that I could find, no official one. So I'm getting the stats off ESPN. From what I can tell, they're not that reliable, and I'll come on to why later on. But I'm going to go with them for the minute. Simon Bergen. Better than I expected is as much I can say about Simon Bergen.
Yeah. Better than expected, but still, like, the scrum improved vastly when Xander came on.
Yeah.
And that's his job is to scrummage. When you're 6'2" or 6'1" or whatever size he is, that becomes a problem. And Bergen's scrummaging has always been a problem. I thought it was an average performance from him. I was glad to see him go off.
Yeah. I mean, we've got an update. Dougie Lowe reckons a ruck is a mêlée ouvrée.
Le man
dans le mêlée
ouvrée.
That doesn't really work for the song, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Man dans le mêlée. No, not too many syllables. Too many syllables. Doesn't he scan? Again, probably a 5.5 for Bergen, I think, because I think if anything, the scrum issues probably were down his side.
They were down his side, and it was like so. There's a telltale sign. Obviously, they went in the sheds at half time. They were able to talk about, we know that they'll not talk necessarily about things that are, they'll try and address problems, but they'll do it in a very, very kind of basic way. So there wouldn't have been a huge amount of technical input from, say, a De Villiers at that point. But when you come back out and then get hooked a couple of minutes later, that's always a bad sign.
Yeah.
And when Xander comes on and the scrum improves immediately with no other personnel changes, again, you've got to ask the question.
And also, I think in the loose things improved as well, because Xander came on and added that bit of impetus.
Yeah,
in attack.
He likes to go forward, does old Xander.
He does, and I'm not sure, but I'm not sure we got that from Simon Bergen. I mean, he carried twice. I think I've got down here. No, he made 2 meters off 5 runs.
Surely, right. So I'm speculating here, right? But he's quite a tall guy. Surely, if he was to catch the ball and then fall forward, he would make more than that.
Yeah. So that would indicate that he's been pushed back a significant amount of meters at some point and then made. I don't know if they count minus meters and then you have to make it up. Yeah.
Which is maybe what we're missing a trick in rugby. Maybe we need to just get lots of Richie Gray sized players. And rather than all these fancy attacking shapes, what we do is you pass the ball, you fall forward. And then you get the next person into the ruck and they do the same and just keep falling forward.
A very slow version of dominoes.
It's like the Irish game, but in tortoise form.
There could be something in that, John. We'll watch for that in the next Scotland next attack patterns.
There you go. You can have that one for free, guys.
Scott Cummins, again, another very good performance. Made his tackles. I thought he made some big tackles. He ran really well. I mean, I'm not trusting the stats on this. He said he made 3 meters. He made more than that. There was one point, though, where I don't know, I still couldn't work out what happened, where he got past the ball and somehow the ball disappeared. And then he ran into a load of French guys and then the ball appeared like behind Ali Price, even though I'd clearly seen on the television Scott Cummins take it into contact. So the ball somehow teleported back 10 meters behind him, and even he was surprised to kind of find that he didn't have the ball on him.
It's World Rugby's new, they're trialing new laws that involve each. It's kind of like, like you got those sort of futuristic sports video games. It's like that where we've got a ball teleporter and you can use it 3 times a half.
Yeah.
It's more of a spectacle. That's why Nigel Owens still has a job.
It goes, resets it back to the gain line automatically. Yeah. So, I mean,
Cummings was good. And again, he came in for a wee bit of flack off people. I don't know what more people are wanting from him, really.
I think he was probably a 7, edging a 6.5, 7, I think.
6.5, I think, is fair. I think people are like, so he's calling the line out. Mm-hmm. He's working incredibly hard in defence and attack. He runs like very good lines. He obviously there was the ball teleportation incident, but other than that, he has an ability to kind of draw in defenders, and he is able to play rugby. He's a very, very talented player, and I think I don't know what more people are wanting from him. Tell us what more you're wanting, please.
He's resilient as well. That's what I'd say. That he makes mistakes but owns up to them. So you can see him saying, that with the ball teleportation, he's saying, sorry, I think there's been a couple of line-out calls that maybe he's got wrong, but he's learning. The line-outs...
He's a young lad as well. That's the thing.
The line-out was better than it was against Italy and better than it was against Wales. So they're learning from the mistakes that they're making, and that's what you want to see. So again, like, he's a young lad. I would say Scotland's in form lock at this stage.
Yeah, agreed.
Robert Johnny then.
RJ.
More effective than a condom. Still on 99.9% tackle completion success rate, we think. Made 11 tackles according to ESPN. Now, he made more meters and he ran more. He is carrying harder. He is definitely making a lot more meters than he was we talked about in the past, where he gets tackled and just falls backwards very softly.
Again, he's aware of the stats and he knows that by falling forward, he has, he's given himself an extra metre and a half.
Yeah. Again, it was I couldn't really find much fault in the performance. It's a 6 out of 10 again for me.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think he done what he was there to do. And again, let's not forget those second rows that he's up against, and the French pack are not very nice to be doing what Johnny Gray has to do to them. And he done very well. He was very effective.
Yeah, he kept a lot of the big French players quiet.
To counter that, he wasn't spectacularly effective. He wasn't doing anything there was nothing that stood out. It's a 6 out of 10 performance. Yeah. Again.
Now, Jamie Ritchie's a strange one because he was absent for most of the game, and the only time he really kind of appeared was at the end where he gave away a needless penalty and got marched back when Scotland were in a good scoring position. Yeah. And I think I don't want to say it needed to happen, but I think it was interesting to see how he reacted to not dominating at the breakdown and being kept quiet by a very good opposition where he's been effectively able to cause havoc wherever he wants to go. There was a cheap shot to the head of a French player. There's been no news on a sighting, but we've been on Scotland have been on the wrong end of players not being cited plenty of times, so we're getting one back there a little bit. But
millions to go.
For me, that's really Jamie Ritchie's first 5 out of 10. I would say performance I've seen of him in a Scotland shirt.
I thought it was
dare I say 4 out of edging down towards a 4 because of some of the mindlessness at the end.
Yeah, I think it was very poor from Ritchie. Disappointing to go with the fatherly chat. It was just disappointing. No, I mean it was his worst performance for Scotland so far, and before we get letters and all that nonsense, no one is saying this makes him a bad player or anything. He had a bad day at the office. We've all had it. Monday to Thursday is a bad day at the office for me. So he, I really hope my boss doesn't watch this. No, he had. He just had one of those days, and I think I agree with you. I think there's an element of, again, he's a young player. He's a young person learning his trade at the very, very, very top end, and there is an element of humbling that maybe not, as you rightly say, not being able to exert his game on a very, very good French pack. It's how he responds to that now, because there's always got to be, players. I remember being told years and years ago by a rugby coach that it's better to learn how to actually play rugby than run over the top of people, because you will inevitably meet someone who is bigger, stronger, faster, more of a horrible person than you. And you can have all the physical attributes in the world, but there will always be someone who is more bad than you and will eventually be able to cause you problems on a rugby park. So it's how you adjust to that. And I think maybe Richie's going to have a think about that. And I'm not saying he changes much, because he's a fabulous player.
No, it's just what his plan B is. So when he's not able to exert himself at the breakdown in the way he was, and when people are nullifying his threat, what does he do in response to that? And that's maybe something that Steve Tandy needs to work on as well in terms of Scotland's defensive patterns as well. What happens when the twin threat of Ritchie and the Mishes is nullified, which it was at the weekend. I mean, it didn't affect Scotland in that, France were able to open us up as a result. The defence still held still, but we weren't able to kind of snaffle the ball or get effective as many turnovers as we would normally have been able to. And I think, the other side of that is that Hamish Watson responded to that much better, because he has that extra element to his game of he put in some really big hits. I think he made 15 tackles. And
he's-
he changed up his game. He was still a nuisance in a different way to which he has been the last couple of games. He was still, he was making big tackles. He was taking guys around the knees. He was front and center of that defensive effort. I thought he was probably Scotland's standout player.
Yeah, he always is. That's the thing. He always is. He always does something that makes you just think, yeah, he was brilliant, or it's certainly better than everyone else. It was interesting, wasn't it? Because we've talked a lot about Richie and Mish being that kind of almost that hunting duo, and that wasn't. It was almost like the hunt had been called off quite early doors, and nobody told Richie. But the Mish had a different cap on. He was off. He was like, right, well, I'm no longer hunting rabbits. I'm hunting something else. That's fine. Sure. I'm off and I'm going to do my thing. But nobody, and Richie was left he was still in the truck with a beer, going, what's going on? Yeah, don't know where everybody's gone.
I think that's fair. The other stand-up players, so I would say Hamish Watson probably I'd stick him up to 6.5, 7.
Yeah, I think 6.5. I think 7's probably generous, but I think 6.5 is fine.
The other stand-up player for me, Matt Ferguson, had a very good game. Now he's been really unlucky with injuries. Matt Ferguson, I don't think he's played a full game at 8 for Scotland yet, because I think every game he's played at 8 for Scotland, he's gone off injured. But he carried very well.
Yep.
Dare I say, he looked like the number 8 we've been calling out for years. He tackled well. He didn't. I think he got. I think at one point he got a penalty, but I think he probably was just on the wrong side of Wayne Barnes rather than anything he'd done wrong. So I thought. I mean, he made 62 meters. He made. This is the most of any forwards. It's actually the most of. In fact, he made the most meters after Stuart Hogg.
Yes, I think there's been quite a lot of people mention Matt Ferguson and they say, "Oh, he's just not up to the standard we need as Scotland number 8." I would say these people don't necessarily watch Matt Ferguson much, and they are more thinking about, "Oh, I don't really know who he is." Mm-hmm. Matt Ferguson is a fabulously talented rugby player, and he carries like an absolute train. To the point where it gets him in trouble, because he does have a habit, like our wee French buddy, of up with the arm a wee bit. He likes to do that, and he gets away with it a lot, but he carries hard. He works hard. He can play rugby. He's just a very talented player. And people say he's too small.
He's only 1 inch shorter than Billy Vunipola.
Yes, exactly.
He's 6'1", which is, that's a reason. I think if you're 6 foot plus, you're all right at number 8, so long as you've got the heft with it. And he's pushing 18 stone.
Yeah, he's not small. He's not small,
and he's athletic with it. It's not like he's put on the beef and he's lost it shorn of a yard of pace. He's fast. He's big.
He's following the model similar to, like, we'll touch on subs, but he's followed the George Turner model. He accelerates really well. And he knows he's got good hands. He'll bring, quite often you see it from kickoffs. He took the ball a lot at kickoffs, as is often the way. And he doesn't do that kind of, people say, he does that wee stuttery step into contact. He's moving the point of contact to try and get a weak shoulder. It makes perfect sense, but he accelerates onto the ball. He accelerates into contact. We watch players standing still so often when they're taking the ball, but you've got a guy there showing them exactly how to do it. And I think George Turner is probably the best example of someone who does that on an unbelievable scale.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We'll come on to subs in a minute. So Matt Ferguson, what we're saying, 6.5, 7?
I think he was a 6.5. I think Mish, Ferguson, and Cummins. There wasn't much between the three of them personally. I think Mish was probably the best. So I might allow you a 7 Since you're the boss, you can go for a 7. Then.
Thank you. I think, I don't think we've ever given Mish less than a 7, apart from that time that he got yellow carded against Italy and we lost.
Was he not playing the game? I gave everyone 0s.
I don't think, was he? I don't think he was playing that game where I gave everyone 0s either.
No.
I don't think I couldn't have brought myself to give Hamish Watson a 0. Good God.
I'm going to review that because I think there might have been a 0 from me, actually.
Oh, we'll find. We'll get back to people and let you know whether or not that's true. We'll start then, but basically we'll go straight on to 9. Then Ali Price, another very good game. I thought from Ali Price, thought he controlled the game well. People were saying, he's put pace, there's a bit more zip in the ball. We touched on this last week. I think there was plenty of zip in the ball before. I don't think there was any difference. Yeah. Maybe just I think in the context of it being against France, it might have looked a bit faster. But again, it was a very assured performance. I think he people have pointed out he may have slightly been at fault for the French try and that he slipped off a tackle, but I don't think you're necessarily relying on your scrum half to be unless it's Antoine Dupont, and I know he's like an immovable object for being 3'2".
Yeah.
But you shouldn't really be relying on your scrum half in your defence too much. I mean, if you're relying on your scrum half in your defence, something's gone wrong.
Well, that exactly right. Yeah, it's kind of like if they are able to do anything at all, then you've got lucky. But to be setting them up as some sort of leader of the defensive structures and getting them to go out and smash people, then I wouldn't say that's the best utilisation of their skills.
Yeah. So I get another 6, I think.
Another 6.
Another 6.
Just laughing at the comment that's come in.
Yeah, says Martin Bell. Sorry, arrived late. Has Fordy got a 6 yet? We are calling, Martin, just so you know, we are calling these the Ross Ford 6s, where we're giving I think everyone's had a 6 so far, apart from Matt Ferguson and Hamish Watson, who made a 6.5.
Cummins got a 6.5. Yep. Everybody else had a 6.
Everyone else had a 6.
4.
Richie got 4. Let's have a look next. So Duncan Weir 6 for Duncan Weir. I think again it was competent. It was a competent performance, and I think that's the best you can say about Duncan Weir over the last. No, this is. Let's talk about Duncan Weir in the context of Scotland's attack. I think people are complaining about Scotland's attack and Scotland's ability to attack.
Yes,
and we've said in the podcast already he's the third choice 10. He can't do the things that Finn Russell and Adam Hastings can do. He doesn't have that ability. He doesn't look like he's being asked to do them either. So I don't know whether or not I don't watch enough of him down in down south to know whether he's doing these things week in, week out. But he's not being asked to do them. He's not doing them. He's just putting in a very solid performance at 10. And I think Scotland, any issues with Scotland's attack that people are bringing up need to be seen in that context of. Yeah. We haven't got Finn Russell. We haven't got Adam Hastings. We just need someone like Duncan Weir to come in and steady the ship.
Yep. No, I think that's absolutely fair. And Weir is he's an honest player. He's an honest pro who's going to do. He's a very, very good. Again, very good rugby player. He'll do a job. As you say, he's not Finn Russell. He's not Adam Hastings. He's a different player. And it's interesting, to a certain extent, people are saying Scotland's attack looks very different just now. But if you reflect back to when Duncan Weir was last our starting 10, yes, the personnel has significantly improved and the overall performances have significantly improved. But the shape of the attack doesn't look all that different in that it was pretty toothless. There wasn't much direction from 10. There wasn't much excitement. It was very pragmatic. But he kicked very well. Yeah. And that's what he's there to do. He's there to kick very well, and he tackles, he misses tackles, but he also, we know 10s miss tackles. He commits himself too often. Maybe defensively he's not that strong, but he was there to kick the leather off it, and he done that well. Yeah. And
you can't, I don't, you can't question his commitment in defence either. He's, he gets stuck in. He doesn't, he doesn't run away shy away from
loves
tackles.
A breakdown.
Yeah,
loves a breakdown.
And again, I think it's just a very effective 6 out of 10 performance, and I think that's where we are. Essentially, we've got our third choice 10, and our third choice 10 can't do what our first and second choice 10 can do. We're not France. We haven't got a long line of young mercurial 10s coming off the production line that can just kind of slot in and do the odd chip over the top. Or
there is maybe an argument at club rugby level. Maybe there's an argument here that, so what do we need to be developing the next generation of Finn Russells and Adam Hastings? I think the answer is Haribo, right?
Kids and grown-ups love it.
Well, exactly, yeah. But think about it, right? So they've changed the recipe of Iron Brew. Okay, they've removed a lot of the sugar. How are we going to develop kids that are completely and utterly barking at the moon to play at 10 if we don't have that? There's basically the sugar tax has ruined Scotland's chances at 10 for a generation to come. And you heard it here first.
It's a fair argument to that. I do think that...
No, there's not. No, there's not.
I know there's not. But I think the thing with the 10's interesting, I think, because that's we didn't produce Adam Hastings. I think we need to be honest about that. True. Scotland didn't produce Adam Hastings. Finn Russell, I'm not even sure. I don't know what produced Finn Russell, but it wasn't Scottish Rugby Academy system.
Yeah, it's interesting that our best 10 for it.
I don't know, Keith Russell, like tripping on some LSD or something somewhere. That's what, who knows what produced, what is it, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where it turns out his dad's a giant planet, like an actual celestial planet that came down in Ego. That Finn Russell is, been brought to Earth by a celestial.
Basically,
he is not of this Earth. But so we haven't, I think, Scotland haven't really. I don't think the Scottish Academy system has not produced Finn Russell and Adam Hastings.
Yes, and we also haven't produced Jaco,
and we haven't produced Nathan Chamberlain because he's come up from down south. So at the minute we are not Scotland. This is the worry. We are not producing 10s. Our 10s are being produced elsewhere and being brought in, and that to me is a little bit of a worry.
Yes, it's interesting that the world class 10 that we have in Finn Russell, as you rightly say, might have been created by a celestial, or it's interesting that he just had very little contact with the SRU for quite a lot of his,
Yeah, and it's that, and I think a lot of it's mindset, a lot of it's give it a go, have a go. Kind of try things over the top, given permission to try things.
Yep.
Is what gets Scotland attack going, and I think it is worrying that below our top 2 we haven't got somebody that can do that. But at the same time, the systems are adaptable so that we're building off a weak attack off strong defence, and there's a lot to be said for that as well.
Yep, definitely, that's massive progress, and I never thought I'd be down with this pragmatism, but I'm into it. I agree.
It's less stressful.
Well, my stress tracker says otherwise, but I have empirical evidence that. Well, actually, I don't, because obviously I wasn't tracking my stress during the Finn throwing bonkers passes era. If we were to again relate this back to wrestling, what would, like, because obviously wrestling's had the different eras, hasn't it? So would we say that, like, the initial Gregor Townsend years, were they like the WWE or WWF as it was at the time attitude? Were they like the attitude years? And
what was all flamboyant and
maybe actually it's more kind of late 80s, early 90s, sort of the Hogan, Randy Savage era, Ric Flair, and maybe now is now in wrestling.
I think now it's a bit more pragmatic, a little bit more on it. The stories are still there, but it's a little bit more honest about what it's doing.
Yeah, transparent. It's trying to be more transparent, but
trying to be more than a sport, because it's got to compete with it's got to compete with UFC now. So they're trying to be more of a sport. So a bit more honest about what they're trying to do. So maybe it is. Maybe that's a good comparison. We've gone from we've skipped everything in between. We've skipped The Rock.
And maybe that was the ball carrying 8 we needed.
I know, and we've jumped straight into to Drew McIntyre here, which is no bad thing. Which is no bad thing at all. The centres, Johnson and Harris, again, come in for a lot of flack because they're not providing the creative spark. But I think the problem is that they don't provide the creative spark because they've got Duncan Weir at 10. And that, again, that's not a criticism of Duncan Weir. It's just an honest appraisal of, that's an honest appraisal of where Duncan Weir is. And, Harris and Johnson and Harris can only work with what they can work with.
Yeah, again, I think there's been a shift of emphasis on what 12 is asked to do for Scotland. Obviously, with when we had Pete Horne at 12, he was more of a second playmaker, and it was used as such. Johnson's not that. He can distribute, but it's not his natural game, and he's not been asked to do that again. There was suggestions that Johnson and Harris are too similar, which I don't know if I agree with that either. I think they're actually quite a good pairing. But as you rightly say, it's back to that idea of if you think of rugby as being here is a pile of something and it is being shoveled along, then there's going to come a point in that conveyor belt that someone is going to have to either deal with that big pile of something, or there's going to be a mistake made, and nobody's going to look good in that. And Weir tends to shovel that way, and the centres normally have to deal with that. And sadly, it's normally man and ball from a very angry French back row coming to smash people. So I thought both the centres were very competent.
I get 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
There's an interesting. Martin Bell's brought this up. He said on the 10s, maybe the Scottish way approach the SRU has introduced will take a bit of time to nurture many Finns, and surely every money rugby player aspires to be Finn. And I think there's something in that. And he's provided a link. There is a technical blueprint that Scottish Rugby have produced for the Scottish way of playing that's kind of supposed to be top down, that it feeds from the international to this is what we're going to try and do as a country. This is the way we're going to play. And a lot of it is feeding into playing what's in front of you. So maybe it will just take a little bit of time for that to feed through. And in the meantime, if and like I said, there's a lot to be said for pragmatism, and I would hope that the pragmatism is built into the blueprint. But you would also hope that we don't lose that play what's in front of you, chip over the top, nutmeg and Munster players, throwing mad looping passes that somehow come off element, because it's a bit of fun. At the same time, Scotland aren't playing high risk, high reward rugby anymore, and I think that I'm not entirely sure that the whole of the Scottish rugby community is on board with that or has come to terms with that either.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there's even the counter to that was that there was a significant proportion of the Scottish rugby community that wasn't necessarily on board with the hashtag fastest brand of rugby in the world, trademarked fitest prop nonsense. There was plenty of people that thought that was utterly mad. And people were calling for more pragmatism and suggesting that maybe people like Russell weren't the people we need. I think there's obviously a balance, and people, you just have to read the comments from coaches that have worked with guys like Finn Russell, and they say how seriously he takes the game and how hard he works behind the scenes to make sure that he knows absolutely. It looks like he doesn't have a plan, but he knows he's working on a different level a lot of the time because he knows exactly what's going on, and he's such a student of the game. So we laugh and we joke about how mental he is, but he is very capable of playing a pragmatic game if he needs to. So he'll be a very good asset when we get him back.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Now the back three then, Jaco Vanderwaal. I thought Duhan Vandermeer is one of the vans.
One of the two vans. He's about the size of a van as well, isn't he?
I get another good. A lot of people are saying we could have got on the ball more. I think it was a tight defensive game, and he made his runs. He'll have learned a lot from that game and playing again. That's the best defense he'll have played against in the last. We've had 3. That's the 3rd game we've played since the Georgia match.
Yep.
So that's the best defense he's going to have come up against. And, or 4th, is it? So we did Georgia, Wales, Italy, France. That's the 4th game he's played. That's the best defense he's going to come up against. So he'll have learned a lot from that game.
Yeah, I think so. And again, when he was on the ball, he was looking dangerous. He always just has that, just by the sheer size of him, he has that ability to bring 3-4 men into the tackle and still retain possession. So again, I don't know how well we can use him just now because of our obvious injury problems at 10. I think we done well against Italy to get him on the ball, and it was more out of necessity than anything else. I think the shapes that we have don't really work that well for him at the moment, but it'll come. And I mentioned the chat with after the Wales game with Finn Russell. After the Georgia game with Finn Russell, and he was basically saying, I said to Duhan, run inside, mate, I'll put you in for tries. So there's an expectation there. They know what they're trying to do. So he will have better days in a Scotland jersey, but it wasn't a bad day.
It was a 6 out of 10, wasn't it?
How many? This is reminding me a lot of in Strictly Come Dancing, right? When they go and they do the whole like people are up for the dance off thing and they're giving you and how many different ways they have to say is not going to be in the dance off. So coming back for another week, returning, and all the different ways that they have to come up with. And I'm thinking like basically we're having to do this for 6 out of 10s.
Yeah, that's it. And again, now Blair Horn,
King Blair Horn.
I don't want to get letters from Ember fans, so be careful about what we say here.
They use email.
Did they use email? Did they?
I don't know.
They'll still write in their get the butler to write the letters for them.
Using a feather quill.
Dictate it to the butler.
To those who it may concern.
Transcribe this for me, Jenkins. Get it off to those boys on the Scottish Rugby Podcast. Very good, sir. And
there are the letters. So you might as well commit to your point now.
I know, well, that's it. Look, I think Kinghorn. I'm going to couple Kinghorn and Hogg into the same category. I think they could pass out of contact more.
Yes.
I think Kinghorn and Hogg had a very good game defensively. I can't criticise them at all. I thought they did everything they could for that try.
Yep.
They backed each other. They trusted each other. We haven't always seen that for the back two defending players for Scotland. I can't fault them at all for that. I think the problem is they both run up a lot of blind alleys when there are options outside of them.
Yep.
And that's to a large extent, that is what's stifling Scotland's attack, that these guys are getting into space running into defences where a pass just before contact or even a little bit before contact would open defences up a little bit.
Yep.
And Hogg used to be very good at doing that, and I don't know what's changed. I don't know if it's a trust thing or a pragmatism thing. I don't know what it is, but he used to use the fact that he would draw in defenders to his advantage and release other players around him. But I didn't see him pass that much.
No.
Close to contact.
Yeah, I think that's Hogg. So I would say that Hogg and Kinghorn, the issue is slightly different for both of them, but it's the same issue. With Hogg, it's almost it seems like he's trying too hard, and it's almost like the captaincy is making him try too hard. He's trying to force that miracle run, that the line break himself. And there was a number of occasions where he was doing that thing he does really well. You're scanning the defence, looking for the opportunities, and then try to accelerate through. And he was being caught with the ball. And there was the opportunity for him to offload. There was the opportunity for him to pass beforehand. There was people, he had support runners. It just seemed like he was trying to force things. With Kinghorn, it seemed more systemic than that. There was almost, and I say this because we've seen Stuart Hogg do it differently. We've seen Stuart Hogg make passes. We've seen Stuart Hogg combine very well with players. I've not seen Kinghorn do that at international level necessarily that much. And there is almost a kind of flat track bully approach that is, he's a big, rangy runner, big lad, very, very quick by all measurements. And there is almost like he tries to do it himself because he thinks he can. And I like that. I like that confidence, but there's got to be, it's back to that thing that you learn again at minis. If you back yourself to when you've got an overlap, you better bloody score.
Yeah, I think that's fair. No, and I think the one thing, and we were talking about this in the group chat before the game. Obviously, they knew, I think, just before the team was announced that the Fiji game wasn't going ahead. So there was an opportunity there to have a switch around in selections, and Gregor Townsend had said, no, there would have been players that would have got their chance next week. This is the team we've been prepping for all week, and this one we stuck with. And to a certain extent, I get that, but I do think that the decision to drop Darcy Graham was probably a mistake in the France game, because I think that would have been the point of difference. Would have been to have Blair Kinghorn on the bench and Darcy Graham starting.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Blair Kinghorn offers a lot from the bench. I think he has come off the bench a number of times and looked okay. I have to agree. I think Darcy Graham is clearly it's his natural position for a start. He's definitely a different type of winger. And it was almost like Scotland were saying to France, like, we're going to pick two absolute brutes in the wing. We're going to pick two centres who are going to tackle all day. We're going to pick a 10 who's going to kick the leather off it. Come at us. Come and run through us. And they stood up very well to that. They obviously, France did try and run over them or kick the ball at them all day. And we were in the game. But it's limited. And that's concerning.
Yeah, I think that's it. Chloe Stanton said her hands in the ruck this week was that she's sick of Hoggy flogging the saying, I'm old enough and ugly enough to death. If I hear him say it one more time, I'm going to scream, and not just because I'm slightly older than him yet clinging onto my roof. It's just a crap phrase.
Yeah, I know. It's between that and we'll take the lessons from this.
I know. And also, we were the better side for 70 minutes. I was expecting James Robson to come and whip him off for an HIA when he said that.
Which he would have inevitably failed because... So, do Scottish rugby people pass HIAs ever?
No,
I think
because our doctors do them properly. That's why.
And that's okay. It's just, again, Glasgow game on Monday with another... Nick Grigg went off for an HIA, which, less said about that, the better. And Tommy Seymour as well. And I don't even think Tommy Seymour got an HIA because he actually, his head hit the turf at Scotland, and it was absolutely brutal. And he went straight off, and he was trying to fight people because he was not happy about going off. I didn't think Tommy had that in him, to be fair. He's such a mild-mannered young man.
Yeah. We're getting on for time, so I was going to say quickly on the bench, George Turner was the standout on the bench for me. I thought I think he probably deserves a start, if I'm honest. I think the last two games, I don't see any issue with throwing him on against Ireland for the last game and having either McInally or Brown on the bench.
he deserves a start, but only to answer the question of whether it's about impact off the bench.
Yeah.
I think he offers so much off the bench, but his form deserves a start.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about Xander Ferguson already. Sean Maitland, I thought, came off and did. No, he's a lot of the player ratings I've read elsewhere have said he came on and he was all right. Actually, he put a lot of pressure on the French kickers, and there was a couple of chances for Scotland in the second half. I think people forget that the kick chase game was working. We were putting pressure on France. It's just that then we would make an unforced error 2 phases later. And
when Maitland came on, as you say, the kick tennis went more in our favour when Maitland came on, and it was very.
And who did he come on for?
Kinghorn.
There you go. Came on for Kinghorn.
I was thinking he was playing very like he was playing at Sally's. It was always in the air. He knew exactly what he was doing. It was good to see.
Knew exactly what he was doing, like a man going to a pub breaching COVID protocols.
Or like a man accepting business deals from
Let's move on. Anyway. Yeah. So we've got Ireland next. Like I said, we'll probably cover that a little bit next week when we're talk about the Oceans Apart film. I'm sure there's lots of lessons for Scotland to learn from that game. I'm sure, but overall, I don't think it was a bad performance, John. I think that's
it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a very good performance against a very, very, very good side, and we kept them honest and not in, as you rightly said at the start, it wasn't in the way that 2006 where we might have scraped a win against them and against all odds. We were in that match and we could have won that match. And moving forward, like I say, we'll talk about Ireland next time out. Probably we're assuming it's Ireland. It might not end up being Ireland, but
I think if Wales beat England, that's the only thing that can change it.
It's interesting, isn't it, that Ireland are a side who look absolutely horrendous, but it's almost like Wales are determined to take the shine off it for me.
Do you know what? We've got a point on that and hands in the ruck. So I'll take this opportunity. Let's
segue.
Let's go on, and we're going to do this now. Yes, it's hands in the ruck time. Now we'll come on to Wales in a moment. I'm retitling this though, tackle or maul, which works. I didn't have time to re-record the jingle, but it does work. Tackle or maul. Because Wayne Barnes, that's one of the worst performances I've ever seen of Wayne Barnes. He was wholly inconsistent for the whole match. Yep. At one point, he called maul, and Scotland were going for that. We're holding up in the tackle, waiting for the call of maul, and then you wait for France to take it down and you get the penalty. At one point, he calls maul, and then he said tackle. And now someone said to me, well, I think when I pointed out during the match, that can technically happen if the maul ends and then there's a tackle. Yep. But he didn't shout over. He didn't. It was a complete brain fart for him, and you could hear Johnny Gray remonstrating with him, saying, "You'd called maul, sir." And there were all sorts of things. It's the normal thing. He's pally with the players. The attempts at cod French, boyish.
It wasn't a great.
Roll away.
Sortie.
Allez.
That means exit. What? You're okay? What? Yeah.
Où est la bibliothèque?
Mon bellissimo.
Ananas. Shouting around in French at the lads. Did anybody any good? So that was my hands in the ruck, was Wayne Barnes. I think there's a lot of people's hands in the ruck as well. Martin Bell, his hands in the ruck now says, are Wales' current problems, apart from being quite amusing, and let's face it, they are, confirmation of Warren Gatland's brilliance as a coach, or is this just the natural teething troubles you get when hiring a new guy who wants his team to play entertaining rugby?
It's the natural teething troubles you have when you hire a person to play a completely different brand of rugby to Warren Gatland, and when you have had a coach in place for how long was Gatland there? 10 years, maybe a wee bit longer. Yeah, there's always going to be issues when you do that. And Pivac was relatively successful. Obviously, won the Pro 14 at the Scarlets. Had them playing some good stuff, but it's a huge ask to translate that to international rugby. And I think there was chat about how, I think it was Squidge was talking about how the Scarlets, it took them about 18 months of constant game time to get to a level that was under Pivac that was a good standard. You don't have that time at international rugby.
I think as well there was a lot of calls within Wales, as there are within Scotland. This is why I'd say careful what you wish for, because Wales now feel like Scotland were pre-Vern Cotter. The directionless, no idea what they're doing. There doesn't really seem to be any overarching plan. Like you said, you can't fix these things overnight. And my understanding is there were calls within Wales, within the WRU, and from fans, we don't want to keep playing Warren Ball. I'm not necessarily I think Warren Ball was a thing for a bit when they had Jamie Roberts, but I don't think it was. They weren't playing Warren Ball at the end. It was a different kind of rugby, but there were calls for a more entertaining brand of rugby, and that's what Wayne Pivac was brought in to do. And as Scotland and Gregor Townsend have demonstrated, you can aspire to do the fastest brand of rugby in the world and play entertaining rugby, but unless you're the All Blacks, and even, let's face it, even the All Blacks don't play
they play when
that
it's
kind
on.
of game. They play when it's on. They kick more than any other team. They play territory. The other teams that play attractive rugby would be Fiji, but it's like Newcastle United in the 90s. They lose spectacularly while they score glorious tries but lose 53-20. It's all well and good.
For the neutral.
Wonderful that you score 20 plus points, but if you're letting in 50, then that's no good to anybody. So that I think Wales, to me, serve as a warning to any Scotland fan who says Scotland don't have an attack. You build a good attack off solid defence. We've got a solid defence. Let's not start, throwing baby out with the bathwater. Look at what Wales are trying to do, and let's not do that.
Well, yes, absolutely, and the same could be said of Ireland, actually. To bring them back up after the Joe Schmidt. That's such a strange name. I just find it confusing. Anyway, bringing in Andy Farrell, there was calls for them to be more expansive in their play, to be more entertaining, and certainly with some of the young Leinster boys coming through, they've tried to maybe move away slightly from the traditional Irish aerial ping pong that they so love. The change of personnel in particular, seeing Gibson Park at scrum half instead of Conor Murray, has seen them try to maybe move the ball a bit more through the hands. And if you watched the game against England, they were absolutely and utterly despicably bad. It was glorious.
I think that's the other kind of warning from the past future, or warning for the future for Scotland, that you've had Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton for so long for Ireland, that there isn't then anybody who's had the opportunity to step up and to fill that role on any consistent basis. So when the fact that Gregor Townsend does, even when both Finn Russell and Adam Hastings are fit, will give Adam Hastings game time is a good thing, because then it's a good sign. And Ali Price is the incumbent, but George Horn is, as much as there are calls for him to play, and he injured his foot, but he gives them opportunities to play, and is giving him opportunities to play, and that's a good thing, because I don't want to get, I would hate to get 5 years down the line and Finn Russell, have a 34, 35-year-old Finn Russell still playing 10 and nobody there to fill it when he retires, which is what the situation Ireland find themselves in.
Yeah, it is interesting as well, because obviously they would maybe say Joey Carberry was the the lad who would be replacing Sexton, but he's injured. He's constantly injured. Ross Byrne is next off the pitch. Again, you look at the 10s that are playing at provincial level for Ireland, and there's three names straight away. That the younger Byrne looks an absolute prospect. You've got Ben Healy at Munster, who just every time I see him, I'm so impressed with him, and so glad Ireland haven't picked him yet.
Yeah.
But he will get a pick, and then he does look like Ronald Weasley. So,
yeah. So that was that hands in the ruck. I've done a couple of other people. Have you? What was your hands in the ruck this week,
so
John?
I was going to have a wee moan, because that's what I always do in hands in the ruck. But I'm going to have a wee moan about the phrase "a bit of the dog about him." So it's going to be a small rant about this, right? So I think this phrase needs to be retired now. And the reason I think this phrase needs to be retired is in the era of hypersensitive refereeing and extra vigilant TMOing, we've got cameras everywhere in stadiums. We have TMOs jumping in at any opportunity to correct referees' mistakes, almost to the point where TMOs are, could you say, refereeing the game. To have a bit of the dog about you is no longer to your benefit. To be the incumbent hard man in your team who goes around, the enforcer, if you will, it no longer works. I think there's plenty of place for being aggressive. There's plenty of place for being having a bit of niggle about you. But if you want someone to have a bit of the dog about them, you get examples like Jamie Ritchie at the weekend, like Ryan Wilson on Monday, who got himself yellow carded for. I mean, it was one of the most. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It was so far this season, it was the most obvious yellow card you will see. And probably by the end of this season, it will still be the most obvious yellow card. It was just brain dead. I don't think this phrase works anymore. And I think people hark back to the era of, sorting things out on the field, and rucking was real, and all this, all the usual nonsense that people talk about. And the bit of the dog comes from that. But having a second row who has a brain is a much better thing.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to get letters for that, so I don't care.
No, but I think it's.
I've got a bit of the dog about me.
No, I think I think you're right. There's a time and place for the dog.
Yeah.
But I think, like you said, when if that's all you have to your game, or when you're reduced to it, it no longer serves to function anything. I think when the players that are often described like that, that is then all. Got a bit of he's got a bit of a dog to them, but he's, that's it. That's all there is to him. That's all there is to Ryan Wilson these days.
Yeah. He's just running around like
fights, and he's already living off past. I mean, how many times have I seen him on a podcast this week talking about that blooming tunnel incident with George Ford? I mean, he's going to be dining out on that for decades.
I know.
That's his after dinner speech and.
Yeah, I liked it at the time, but I mean, it's got to the point now where you're kind of like, come on, Ryan, like, tell us about a time. Maybe tell us about the time where you played 7 in a title-winning team. That would be more impressive.
Very true. Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think this it probably needs to be dropped because I think it just covers up. It papers over the cracks of players' abilities.
Yeah, if that's all you've got, then I'm sorry, but yeah.
And if that's what you want to watch rugby for, then go and watch UFC.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, back in the day, if you wanted your brutality served in a sporting form, then you had to maybe indulge in rugby, but I would perhaps argue rugby league would have been a better option for you. But if union was your flavour, then you could get all the all the aggression you wanted. But now you've got options. There's like pay-per-view UFC. You can go and you can do your worst, and it's all the best bits of rugby for you, but in a different format. It's great.
And the rest of us can watch teams kick it back and forward in like an intricate game of kicking chess.
Exactly. I always loved playing kick tennis at training, so I'm in my element now.
It also gives the forwards a rest.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I await Ollie Kebble turning up with a deck chair at some point and planting it and halfway and putting a book and getting a good book out. And
I just need a rest. Give me 5 minutes to catch my breath. Kick it back. Keep kicking it back and forth.
Just ping it back, guys.
Yeah. That's it anyway for this week. We've rambled on long enough.
As always.
An hour and 40 minutes. The theme tune's included in that as well, so we're getting on. If you want short versions of the podcast, then sign up to the Patreon and we'll do a short version of it where you can get it.
We're not telling you what's in that shortened version, though.
No,
it might actually just be all the waffle.
That's it. It's just me trying to remember the words in French to head, shoulders, knees, and toes on a loop for half an hour.
It would be like that. The YouTube of the Hobbits. The Hobbits are going to Isengard. There's a 10-hour version of that. It would be like that. I think we could definitely do a 10-hour version of you.
10 hours of me trying to remember head, shoulders, knees, and toes in French before remembering that it doesn't have the word hands in it anywhere.
None of those are in the rock.
Anyway, that is it for this week. Don't forget, next week we'll be reviewing the Oceans Apart film. We'll be previewing Ireland. We've got hopefully have Dan Leo on the podcast as well to interview. Join us on the Patreon to give us a bit of support. Again, next week we're going to try and put together our hardest Scottish player of all time list. If not, it will definitely be the week after. There's just been a few things that have interfered with that timing wise. So you'll definitely get 2 special podcasts in December to make up for the fact that you missed one in November to get your money's worth. For the moment, though, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from John.
Bye, folks.